Some say the Danish alone and the wilderness contestants aren't strong, but others catch plenty of fish and make skewers to eat. He even uses stones to corral the fish. Truly delicious fish meat doesn't need any seasoning. One bite is incredibly satisfying. It's now the second day and Li Wei is getting ready to explore the lake's far side. He plans to set his net if he finds a good spot. He's been passionate about fishing since childhood and knows the best spots. Now, he can use a net to catch fish. As long as his luck holds, he should catch some fish. The only problem is securing the net, so he needs something to hold the line up. Luckily, he finds many discarded bottles. He fills them with gravel, confident they'll secure his net effectively. Food seems manageable. Lai Shi, on the other hand, slept well but woke up with a nosebleed, which startled him. He was quite scared upon waking, thinking he was hurt, but it turned out to be nothing serious. Later, he plans to find a more suitable long-term spot. Staying here until winter isn't quite feasible. Waking up to a warm fire is such a blessing for him. In wilderness survival, there are two opponents, oneself and nature. No one can predict what will happen next. Adjusting one's mindset is crucial. Doing nothing but daydreaming can waste an entire day. It's essential to plan daily tasks, otherwise time can easily be wasted. Now, he forces himself to stay active. Even though his shelter looks decent, water tends to gather nearby. He aims to build a bigger, drier one. He dreams of bringing his family here one day. The open spot over there, free of water puddles, seems ideal. Also, it's near the current camp, simplifying the move. It's under 100 meters from the coast, with a stream close by. Getting water will be much easier. Staying dry is essential, so he needs to start collecting materials for the shelter. It will take quite a bit of time. He plans to make it a triangular structure and cover it with a tarp. The center of the shelter has to be raised, and the interior must be spacious enough, otherwise it will be difficult to find things. Every time he chops wood, Lai Shi can't help but hum a little tune. So far, he feels he's adjusted to the intensity. Despite his growling stomach, the bed he made is quite comfy. He thinks he could lie there all day. Stein's situation is much worse. He can't remember how much time he spent on the shelter. Anyway, once he finished, he fell asleep immediately. Plans never keep up with changes. He originally wanted to find a good spot. Unexpectedly, he wandered until dark without finding one, and finally built something randomly. His mood was quite low then. He thought about giving up several times yesterday, but leaving on the first day was too hard to accept. Luckily, he persisted. Although the shelter took a lot of time to build, living in it is really no problem. It's just that the rain outside affects his mood a bit. He still has many things to do, especially regarding food. His stomach growls with hunger, and he's down to his emergency rations. Lasting a month is no longer on his mind. If he can stay here for a week, he already feels quite accomplished. The camera shifts to John. His stomach is extremely hungry. As soon as he wakes up, he runs to the coast to check the traps, hoping to catch some fish. John slowly pulls the net ashore. It's undeniable that using a gill net is much easier. He quickly feels the weight on the net. He's very sure there's a fish in there. Now, with a rope at the end, he can pull the net up. You can see the fish is quite lively. It's not very big, but enough for a good meal. Emil isn't as lucky. He goes elsewhere to look for resources. This area is full of small trees. At least firewood isn't a concern, though it's a trek from the shelter. He aims to explore near the rock wall, hoping to find more resources up there. So far, he's only found berries that make him hungrier the more he eats. But it's better than starving. The only good news is the traces of reindeer. If he can hunt one, even if he doesn't win the prize, he'll be satisfied. It seems they come here to eat berries regularly, so maybe he can set up a trap. Once inside the cave, they'll emerge to forage. Emil, familiar with reindeer habits, has hunted them before. But that was with the help of companions. Now he's alone and unsure if he can manage. Ideally, he could hunt a fawn, which would be much easier to manage. Emil is very concerned about his family, especially with his wife expecting their second child. He needs to look after himself and his son. His wife supports his decision to join the challenge, knowing he loves nature. Living self-sufficiently, he's confident in his survival skills and plant knowledge. He's skilled at foraging for food in the wild. To feel more at ease about this challenge, he asked his parents for help. He keeps family photos in the shelter and looks at them daily to ease his homesickness. It's raining heavily outside again, so he sits idly in the shelter, already feeling homesick on just the second day. But it's only the second day, which is a bit early. He aims to stay for a month, though he says that Emil's mood is noticeably getting worse. Li Wei finally reached evening and it's time to cast the fishing net. With luck, he'll find a fish in it by morning. Otherwise, he'll be hungry again. He cast the net near the same spot, hoping the lizards would come by at night. Li Wei looks very confused, doubting the effectiveness of the net. He generally enjoys being in nature. Being in nature relaxes him. Wilderness survival is about self-challenge, and for him, this test The main concern is finding food. He needs at least one fish daily to stay full. Surviving on just water would only last him a week. If he decides to quit, it will be because he misses his family too much. He thought he was ready for everything before arriving. But once he got here, he realized how difficult reality is. It's hard to imagine how previous contestants managed to stick it out. He prefers snow over rain. After all, it's easier to spot reindeer tracks in the snow. Goodness. Everyone's focused on catching a reindeer to survive, but I believe reinforcing the shelter is more important. I'm really concerned a strong wind could blow it away. On day 3, Stein finally enjoyed some sunshine and could step out for fresh air. He has many tasks, but finding food is his top priority. Meanwhile, Lychee headed to the water for a bath. Even in wilderness survival, hygiene is important. Cleaning up from time to time keeps you healthy and relaxed. If the water wasn't so cold, he'd love to soak in it. Once back on shore, he needs to exercise to warm up. If I didn't know Lychee was here for the challenge, I'd think he was on vacation because he's having such a good time. Meanwhile, Li Wei checked the fishing net first thing in the morning. I have to say, the fish here are pretty good. He managed to catch one, even though it's a bit small. But it's a good start. Hopefully, he'll catch bigger fish in the future. Emil keeps reminiscing about his family. He feels incredibly selfish and is filled with guilt. He tries to stack stones on the shore to feel better. Just moving the stones back and forth takes a lot of energy. I think we can declare Emil eliminated early. She stopped conserving her energy and is just concentrating on building. She dedicated most of her day to it. At last, she completed the monument. Currently, only Li Wei appears to be competing. Today, he keeps working on his shelter. To have enough space, he spent a lot of time building it. Now, he just needs to cover it with a waterproof sheet. It's much better than the previous one, but it consumes a lot of energy. He needs more food to fill his stomach. But more crucially, he craves companionship. Speaking to the camera only heightens his loneliness. John is rushing to the beach to check because a buoy has sunk and disappeared. It might mean a fish is caught, whether there's a fish or not. He has to go check. It's time to see if there's any catch. I have to say, catching fish here is a bit easier. This is the biggest fish caught by any contestant so far. John is so excited he wants to swallow it whole. Also, there's still another net to check. If the weather holds, he should be able to catch a fish daily without any issues. Now, he has so many fish that he needs to figure out storage. For her, the wild is like home. She spends a few days out there every week. She doesn't have strong feelings about the competition. If she feels her body can't take it, she'll choose to go home. Ultimately, her family is waiting, and being with them is paramount. She spent a long time preparing for this challenge, carefully considering every piece of clothing and item was thoughtfully chosen. With food, the toughest part of survival, already sorted, she can now focus on building her shelter. Loon aims to complete the shelter today. The driftwood on the shore shows the wind usually blows in this direction. This crucial finding means he must consider the wind while building the shelter, so he won't have to constantly worry about it. He has a basic plan for the shelter but needs to gather resources, especially by catching some fish. After all, a lot of energy will be consumed next. Rune spent quite some time wandering along the coast and found this spot to be quite good. A nearby river makes fetching water easy. Rune is pleased with the spot and ready to build the shelter. He weaves a crossframe with tree trunks, covers it with a waterproof cloth, and weighs it down with branches and stones. Just need some moss to block the rain and it's done. Not bad at all. The aim is to move in before dark. Li Wei has a bold idea. He doesn't know if it's right, especially since it's almost dark and he's just starting to prepare to move. He's only had one fish for energy so far, and his mental state is worse than he thought. He's considered giving up moving several times. In the end, he pushed himself to complete it, hoping for a more open area and a larger shelter space. But when he rearranged everything, it was worse than he imagined. It felt like it could tear apart at any moment. Li Bei felt really let down by himself. With little time left, he could only tweak things slightly. He hopes to fix the shelter by tomorrow, but he looks ready to give up. It's only the 4th day of the competition. Lychee had a rough night, with mosquitoes pestering him and winds seeping through the gaps. The new shelter didn't meet his expectations. He needs to block the wind and plans to use branches to secure the sides, then stack them up. The nearby materials are abundant, so it won't take long to gather a bunch. It doesn't have to be fancy. If it blocks some wind, it's fine. That's basically how to do it. Lychee's days are improving, but Li Wei's situation is dire. His shelter is more like a flimsy cloth than a real one. Now he's starving and needs to eat before he can work. Catching a big fish would be ideal. He hopes the net caught many fish overnight. Now on the rocks, Li Bei starts pulling it up immediately. The waves are huge today, so he can't pull up a net. He takes off his shoes and wades into the water to manage it. In this weather, he can't stay in the water long. Next time, he shouldn't set the net so far. Li Bei's calves were shivering from the cold. When he pulled the net, it was empty. It seems berries are the only food today. His mood sank. The shelter's progress will probably be delayed again. Joe has so many fish that he has to store them outside. I wonder if he's concerned they might escape. He's going to make fish soup to get his nutrients, skipping any seasoning. He loves the natural taste and finds it very satisfying. He also spotted a deer in the distance. If he had a bow and arrow, he would have gone hunting. Li Bei is both tired and hungry. Several times, he forgot his location and his mental state is quite poor. He also feels physically unwell. Despite his poor condition, he still has to gather resources, which drains him mentally. Getting back to the shelter was a real struggle. He's unhappy with the shelter but too exhausted to repair it, so he's thinking about relocating. The forest area seems more suitable. Li Wei is very confused right now, with hardly any food to eat. He's wasting energy wandering around. I doubt he can last the week. If Li Wei had the strength, he could build a decent shelter. The shelter's falling apart. He should probably just head home before he loses his mind. Everyone is guessing how long he can hold out. There are plenty of blueberries around Lai Shi's shelter, providing some relief. It's starting to get dull. On day 5, Li Wei felt a bit better but was still unsure of his next move. So he opted to collect some wild fruits. Emile has been longing for his family since he arrived. Sitting around feels torturous. This survival experience is not what he imagined. So far, only Lai Shi seems to be doing well, with no worries about food or shelter. Lai Shi seems to have no problems, while Li Wei is starving and doubting his decisions. He's only caught one fish in 4 days. Surviving on wild fruits has left him feeling awful, nearly in tears. He believes the show's location choice is terrible. After wandering, he went back to his old campsite. Li Wei is so hungry he's delirious and just wants to rest at the shelter. I initially believed Li Wei or Emile would be the first to quit. Who could have guessed it would be Lai Shi? He seemed to be thriving. He had a great chance of winning. The show is curious why he quit. The reason turned out to be boredom. Lai Shi felt that staying here was less interesting than going on a cycling tour. He chose to leave in less than 5 days. I hope he doesn't regret his choice. Who do you think has the best shot at winning among the remaining 9 contestants?